All right. Hello, people who are doing marine biology. Are they at the Baltimore Aquarium?
I think
There's some aquarium.
Good. Let's pick up where we left off last class, which is talking about predicate logic. Oh boy, predicate logic is great. Famously, as we discussed last class, there are sentences of mathematics which are impossible to state with just propositional logic, but can be stated with predicate logic. And today we're going to do 2 or 3 things. One is, we already kind of did the broad overview of what predicate logic is about, which was pretty vague, I thought. Today we're going to get comfortable with the expressive power of predicate logic by learning how to capture statements of predicate logic with symbols. So, or to express quantified statements using the language of predicate logic, I should say. Okay, so if you flip to the next page, and some of you might have done stuff like this before, and some of it's kind of obvious, but some of it's like a little bit hard. So here we go. Page 2. Use quantifier logic to translate the following sentences. So here I introduce, for purposes of demonstration, 2 unary predicates. What's a unary predicate?
Single argument. Single argument.
A predicate that takes a single argument. There aren't a lot of good words that start with P and Q. I made terrible mistakes my first year with, I think it was like, I don't remember what we did for P.
Pretty.
I think it was maybe like pretty, and then I just let whatever the students in the room shout out the first word that they thought of. I think they said pregnant for P. And that entire semester, we were just like constantly talking about like pregnancy. It was like weird. So I picked like boring words, because I think that's like better. So P means preppy, and Q means quiet. Okay, so first sentence of English, which is pretty unambiguous, but there are some potential twists. Some quiet people are preppy. Okay, so our domain of discourse is like a little bit underspecified, just like you have a bunch of people, I don't know, maybe in the school or something. And now we have the statement, some quiet people are preppy. Well, what does that mean if some quiet people are preppy? Translate that into like a kind of like lower level sort of like pseudocode type thing, yeah?
There is at least one person who's quiet and preppy.
There is at least one person who is quiet and preppy. Yeah, and with the language of predicate logic, we can express that, right? And so at the very end of class, I introduced the quantifiers. I think almost all of you knew them already, but maybe you didn't. So this is what we do. That for a D means there exists. And so the way we translate A is, there is a person who is preppy, and that person is also quiet. Get it? Yo.
Like, just to be pedantic, I kind
Yeah.
of want some to be like more than one.
Yes, so some is vague, right? And so there are senses in which if there is only one person, some people might reject that one person is enough to register some. So because it's vague, there's sort of a tradition to kind of translate it this way. But yeah, of course what we're doing is we're taking vague sentences of English and we're like imposing a unambiguous translation of that sentence into logic. So we do have to make some choices. So like it's just kind of standard to translate some that way. Cool? Okay, good. And yeah, no, keep being pedantic because there's a couple of twists coming up. Okay, good. Some preppy people are quiet. Yeah, so that actually ends up meaning the exact same thing, right? Some quiet people are preppy and some preppy people are both saying that there is some overlap between these sets, so to speak, and that there's at least one person who satisfies both. So that's interesting because at least on this translation, these 2 sentences have the exact same logical meaning, but perhaps they have different like connotations or something like that, right? So that sort of doesn't get captured by this. All right, do you want to just be like left alone for a few minutes, or should we do a couple together? Let's do a couple more together. C, no preppy people are quiet. I can think of a couple different ways to do this. Anyone want to like By the way, have you guys like some of you like done this before? They do this in AI. Did anyone take AI last year? Yeah. Okay. So yeah, if you took it, then don't. Yeah, Jody, you're just gonna use some common sense. Go.
Not some preppy people are quiet.
Yeah. So no preppy people are quiet kind of means the same thing as it's not the case that there are some preppy and quiet people, right? Yeah. So that's his sort of like translation. No preppy people are quiet. Then there isn't any overlap. And so that is one way to do it, right? That just to say that it's not the case that there is a person who is preppy and quiet. I think that pretty adequately captures what's going on. There's another sort of natural translation. If no preppy people are quiet, then what is true?
Preppy implies not quiet.
Yeah, that everyone who is preppy is loud, right? If no preppy people are quiet, then sort of like every preppy person is loud. He actually said something a little bit different. He said preppy implies not quiet, basically, right? Yeah, and in fact, how can we translate the sentence? How most naturally can we translate every preppy person is loud? Ian, I'll give you a shot at it.
Yeah, P of X implies not Q of X.
P of X implied, okay, so he said P of X implies not Q of X. But of course, like, a variable is just kind of like a pronoun, right? It's sort of like a thing that can refer to anything. So it's sort of like semantically not allowed to just have sentences like totally out of context where you're just like, he is sick. Well, who's he, right? That doesn't sort of mean anything. So
For all X.
for all, yeah. So he sticks in front of this. Maybe he thought that was implied. But yeah, and this is the use of the universal quantifier, which means kind of like for all or every. So the way we interpret this is saying for every possible X, if they're preppy, then they're not quiet. Cool? I think that is a pretty good translation of no preppy people are. All right, and we see how that's why a lot of these things have multiple translations. Okay, just do a couple more for a few minutes and then we'll meet back together. What's up?
Would you do things like that?
So that's kind of like an informal type thing. Usually we just say there exists an X.
There is, oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
And there exists a Y.
It's
You guys are going really fast. Alright, maybe everyone's going fast. Okay. So how about D? No noisy people are preppy. I can think of two ways to do that, right? One is, it's not the case that there exists a person who is noisy and preppy. Alternatively, if no noisy people are preppy, then all noisy people are not preppy. Which we could translate as for all X. If you're noisy, then you're not preppy. Cool? Everyone agree? Tell me if you don't agree. Alright, I'm just going to keep on going. All preppy people are quiet. So that's like for all X, if X is preppy, then X is quiet. All quiet people are preppy. Is kind of just like the reverse, or the converse. For all X, if you're quiet, then you're preppy. G. Not all preppy people are noisy. change my mind. That's not right off. Not all preppy people are noisy. I can think of two ways to do this one. Let's talk about this for a second. I'm on G. Yeah. What do you got?
So doesn't that just translate to some quiet?
Yeah, if not all preppy people are noisy, then some preppy people are quiet. Yeah, so I basically agree. Not all preppy people are noisy. And he wants to first translate that into, if not all preppy people are noisy, then some preppy people are quiet. Some preppy people are quiet. And here I'm just kind of like counting on you to use your own like intuition as to what these words mean as like native speakers of English. So okay, if you rewrite it like this, then we know how to do this, right? There exists a person who is preppy and quiet. But it's also possible to sort of translate not all preppy people are noisy in a kind of a different way, right? By saying sort of, well, if it's not the case that all preppy people are noisy, that's kind of what not all preppy people are noisy means. So in other words, it's not true that for every single person, if they're preppy, then they are noisy. Do you guys agree with both of these translations? Yeah? Okay, and now maybe, are you noticing something that's kind of like a pattern emerging? Maybe we should discuss right now regarding these like multiple translations. It seems like every sentence you could translate with the universal quantifier and the existential quantifier. Can we talk this out?
Sure.
Yeah. Have you guys heard of this kind of thing before? Yeah, okay, anyone who took discrete obviously did. So maybe like someone else. Woo! Who didn't take discrete in this room? Yeah, yeah, Donna, say the obvious.
Oh, I did not realize that it was the obvious.
Oh, maybe it's not obvious. Just say what you were thinking.
Oh, I was just.
Oh. So do you see that there's kind of like a relationship between like the quantifiers all and like there's like some kind of relationship? Wait, maybe you don't see it.
Oh wait.
Maybe it's not obvious.
Yeah, anyway, so if you have like not always a thing, then there's going to be some instance of the thing. That's what you can use the.
Yeah, exactly. If it's just consider the following. If it's not the case, I think this is what you just said. If it's not the case that everybody is preppy, then intuitively, what is that saying?
There exists someone who isn't preppy.
Yeah, then there exists someone who isn't preppy. That sounds and feels very right. That this seems like a logically valid argument with quantifiers to make. And then there's kind of a reverse of it as well.
Like, if there does not exist people who are preppy, then all people aren't preppy.
Exactly. Yep. Yeah, and in fact, these are just the De Morgan laws for the quantifiers. De Morgan laws for the quantifiers. And they are called the De Morgan laws because they basically just are the sort of infinite versions of the De Morgan laws in a kind of a way. So okay, first let's just talk it out one more time. If it's not true that everyone is preppy, then there is someone who's not preppy. That just seems got to be right. And if there's not a preppy person, then everyone is not preppy. Okay, these are, and we'll get to that in a second. So these were like first written down at least by Aristotle. So in one of the prior analytics, posterior analytics, he goes on and gives all the rules for these kinds of arguments. We call them the De Morgan's laws because there's some sort of symmetry here between these and the classical De Morgan's laws. The classical De Morgan's laws say that the negation of like a conjunction is the disjunction of the negations. Well, imagine that in this domain of discourse, there were in fact like 5 people, okay? Let's call those 5 people like let's do 4 people. A, B, C, and D. Well, if there are only 4 people in your entire domain, then saying it's not true that everyone is pretty is kind of like saying it's not true that A is pretty, and B is pretty, and C is pretty, and D is pretty. Because the conjunction of the statement saying that all 4 of your people are pretty is kind of like a long-winded way of saying everyone's pretty. Does everyone agree with this? Okay, and what do the De Morgan laws tell you? They tell you that it's not true that all this is true. Then what can you conclude?
It's not true A, or it's not true B, or
Yeah, either A is not pretty, or B is not pretty, or C is not pretty, or D is not pretty. And that's exactly what this is kind of saying, right? So the reason why this is not just a shorthand is that you can have like infinite domains, right? Like the domain could be all real numbers, in which case you can't just list them all out like this or something, right? And so this really is like of a higher expressive power, but the logic behind it is exactly the same. And here, if there does not exist someone who's pretty, then that's kind of like saying that it's not the case that A is pretty, or B is pretty, or C is pretty, or D is pretty. And if it's not the case that one of those is true, well then, by the propositional logic De Morgan laws, then that means that A is not pretty, and B is not pretty, and C is not pretty, and D is not pretty, which is exactly what this conclusion is saying. That one is up. All right, cool. What if we accept the De Morgan's laws for the quantifiers, and I urge you to accept them at least like temporarily or whatever, well then I can actually verify, I put that in quotes or something, that that these that would feel like 2 different alternative correct translations of this sentence are in fact the same. Because, take this sentence right here, not for all x, P of x implies not Q of x, and let's just apply a bunch of like translations to this, kind of like how we did earlier, right? With propositional logic. So, all right, so this says not for all x. Does everyone kind of see where this is going? I'm gonna just like convert it, check it, right? This arrow can be rewritten as P of x arrow not Q of x can be rewritten as not P of x or not Q of x. See what I'm doing? I just used the rule for eliminating the arrow and replacing it with like not A or B. Nod gently if you're like, yeah, Mr. Rose, I got you. Woo! All right, and now if we accept this new rule that we just stumbled upon for distributing a negation through a universal statement, then this becomes that there exists an x such that not all the stuff. Right? Because if not everybody has some property, then there exists someone that doesn't have that property. Okay, and now, via the old De Morgan's laws, this just becomes P of x and Q of x. Alright, so, cool. Alright, so if we accept the De Morgan's laws for the quantifiers, that sort of shows how these two are the same. Alright, there are some like small issues here, and so I think you were about to say this like a minute ago, and I stopped you. There's like some sense in which maybe these arguments are not sort of perfectly valid. Yeah.
Like vacuous, like if you like, yeah, like vacuous truth.
Like vacuous truth. Yeah. In particular.
So like say there's okay. So like say your domain of discourse is the empty set.
Yeah. That's I think the only time.
I'm pretty sure that's
right.
right.
Yeah. So Anson says, just imagine that your domain of discourse is no one. Okay. So there just is no one in your domain whatsoever. All right, if there's no one in your domain whatsoever, then maybe we want to say that the statement for all x, P of x is, wait.
Isn't that still fine though? Because
Yeah, I think it's still okay.
Yeah,
I think it's still like logically valid.
You're just saying
It's just like maybe a little uncomfortable with.
Okay, yeah, I think this is the one maybe that's weird. So if there are no people in the entire world that you're talking about, then I think this premise, I want to say, is true, right?
Yeah.
There certainly does not exist someone who's preppy. So the fact that there does not exist a preppy person, that's pretty unambiguously true. But now saying that everybody is not pretty is
Everybody in the domain of discourse,
weird.
which is no one, so you can't.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so I'll just say yes, but I don't love it. But yeah, to say this just okay,
Well, you wrote-
everyone
you wrote
is not
false,
pretty is true.
You wrote false, but I mean it is true.
Oh, sorry,
It is
sorry,
like it's a vacuous
true. Yeah, I wrote false. I meant true. Yeah, it's true, but it's odd at least. Okay, okay, so this is gonna depend on whether we like allow this or not and stuff like that. It's okay. More on that later. All right, good. Should we just like do the rest of these? You guys are going way faster than I am. And then they're pretty easy, and then suddenly they get a little bit hard. So that was H. Everyone is either preppy or noisy. Okay, so that means for every single person in the whole world, they are either preppy or not quiet. That was pretty easy.
Wait, Mr. Rose?
What's up?
Is this exclusive or?
Oh, no, it's the same inclusive or as always.
Gotcha.
Right, it's the same logical order. Okay, no one is preppy and noisy. Okay, so there does not exist a person who is preppy and noisy. So, cool.
It says either, but you're not using exclusive.
I think either is definitely
Either
exclusive.
is not, yeah, there's like some myth floating around that if you use the either or construction, then that's necessarily exclusive. That's what you were getting at?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's just like a myth.
What?
I think that's just a myth. I think people use either or for all kinds of different reasons. Like if you have a really long sentence and you want to warn people that there's an or coming up, you might say,
Yeah, like semantically,
yeah,
linguistically, it does
like,
not
okay,
be exclusive.
take this, ready? You can be on National PE Honor Society if either you have completed all required credits, play a sport, and are, didn't steal a basketball, or, and then like some other dumb thing, right? That's not exclusive,
Yeah.
right?
I agree with that.
It's inclusive, but the either is just used as like almost like a parenthesis to your reader so that they can hear, that they can know that there's an or coming up. So I think that's just like a bad rumor that either or always means exclusive. Yo, you disagree?
I think that the only reason is because it's pretty obvious that if you have both, then you're fine in that situation. But I think that people should only use or.
We have a prescriptive grammarian who would like people to only use either or in certain situations, but you think?
People, it's only clear that you could be both because of the situation. I don't think.
Yeah, but that's my argument.
That's
that
how-
it doesn't
that's how
necessarily
language
mean.
works.
In language, yes. If we're translating things to logic, I think we should use or. I mean, I don't care what.
If you say you're either preppy or you're noisy, that does not unambiguously signal
Yeah,
an exclusive.
I think
or.
it's still
It
ambiguous.
can
Yeah.
it can signal an exclusive or, but it's not unambiguous.
Ambiguous, but that doesn't mean like, oh, that's going to make it exclusive because it could also be taken. It could be taken as
That's
or
how you
extra. I'm just saying
But
you
that's
could
how
write
you
either
do
one and it would be
ambiguous.
fine.
Yeah, and we did one that was fine.
Yeah, okay, all right. So Grace would like us to, well, I don't know, whatever. I think it's ambiguous, so I'm just gonna do it
Either
over.
way is fine.
Yeah, good. Okay, good. Let's go to the next. Wait, where does it start getting fun? Oh yeah, like now.
And like never.
Okay, no, never. Whoa. Speak for yourself. I've been having fun for a long time. At least one person is preppy. Okay. How do we do this? Oh, this is boring.
Isn't it just
Yeah.
equal to some people or?
Yeah, this means that there is at least one person preppy. There exists an act such that X is preppy. Okay, I take it back. It's still not fun yet. Now we're getting somewhere. At least two people are quiet. Ooh. Somehow we can use predicate logic to like count or whatever. Yeah, this guy like knows what to do. At least two people are quiet. Okay, loosely speaking, like how do we say that there are two quiet people? At least.
There's one quiet person and another quiet person?
And another quiet person. Okay, so like there exists an X
it exists a y.
Yeah, and actually, you know, it kind of doesn't matter a little bit so much where you put it. I'll write this a couple different ways. There exists an x who is quiet. And,
There exists a y.
a use of a second variable, there exists a y such
Who
that
is not
y
x.
is quiet, and, okay, people in the know are saying that if you just left it like this, that wouldn't actually say what you think it says, right? Because it says that there's a person who's quiet and there's another person who's quiet, but the very idea of variables is that they can refer to like any element of the domain. In fact, when we eventually get more detailed about this, we will interpret like this previous one, there exists an x p of x, is true if you can find a person in the domain, which if you stick in for x will make it true, right? And here, I'm permitted to say, I'm permitted to stick in for the variables like any person from the domain. So yet, I want to capture in K that there are two quiet people, and built into like the normal English way that we use that words in that sentence, we mean like two different people, right? Okay, but the logic needs to be told that. And so we have to add, if we just left it like this, if there was only one quiet person in our domain, this sentence would still be true. Because you would just like set x and y both equal to that person. So in order to force the interpretation to mean what you want it to mean, you have to add in and these people are different. So this says there is a person who is quiet, and there is a person who is quiet and is not that previous person you were talking about. Cool? Okay, yo.
Does it matter where you place your quantifiers?
It kind of doesn't in this case, and it is more standard, normal, just because, I think just because it's prettier, to put them on the outside like this, to be like, there exists an x, such that, there exists a y, such that, x is quiet, and y is quiet, and those variables point to different elements in the domain, which is essentially what this is saying. And that's why we, and, this not equals is like, just really just shorthand for it's not the case that x equals y, but everyone just uses the not equals. Cool? But that's kind of why we want equality built into predicate logic, because it's a very powerful way of forcing two variables to refer to different things. All right, are we good? All right, good. At most one person is preppy. Okay, there are two ways to do this. Actually, there's several different ways to do this, which are kind of all a little different. Let's do one first. Woo! Anton will do one. Anton.
Not exists x, exists y, x is not equal to y, and p of x and p of y.
Yeah, okay, yeah. So he's basically interpreting at most one person is preppy is there can't be two preppy people. Yeah. That is one way of doing it. It's not the case that there are two people who are both preppy and both different people. That seems good. Does anyone do it a different way? Yeah.
Say like either no one is preppy or one person is preppy, and then for all people that aren't that person, they are not preppy.
One more time.
So either no one is preppy, or there exists a person that is preppy, and for all people that aren't that person, they are not preppy.
Yeah. Okay, wait, I'm gonna hold off on that one because it's like kind of almost extra weird. I'm gonna get back to that. Yeah, another one, Grace.
For all x, if p of x implies for all y, x equals y implies not.
Wait, can you just do it in like kind of give me the pseudocode way of doing it first, and then because I can't follow all these like brackets and stuff. Like translate it. Like say it again.
Okay, for all x, p of x implies for all y, x. If x is not y, then not p of x.
So for all x, if x is pretty, then for all y, if x is not pretty, then
Wait, what?
I think that's actually wrong.
Can you write it so we can like all see?
Yeah, I think that's actually wrong. It gets kind of hard to find out that is wrong, but I think it is. But I also might be wrong. If x is not y, then not p of x. Okay, so This is
Not
the
P of.
not P of Y. Okay, so this is what Grace, is what you said? Okay, before I look into this one, because I'm not actually 100% sure of this yet, can I give the translation that I know is correct, that I think you guys were going for? Which is to say, basically, if there's at most one pretty person, then Ensign just went straight for you can't have two different people that are preppy. But alternatively, you could say, yeah.
Yes, I was like, it's either no preppy people or one.
Yeah, that's kind of what he's doing, but I think that's actually like harder. That's actually more complicated, because if you just want to say at most, what you want to say is, if you have yeah.
You just want the De Morgan to this, right? For all x, for all y, either not x is ugly, or what x is not preppy, or y is not preppy, or they're equal to each other.
I was still going for something different. If you have two people that are both preppy, then they must be the same person.
Oh, that's the same thing.
Is that the same thing?
Yeah. That just turns ors into implies, I think.
This is one of the classical translations, which I think, do we all agree that that does capture it, right?
Yeah.
Take any two people whatsoever. If they're both preppy, then they must both be the same person. And actually, some people find the contrapositive of this to be more intuitive, which is that if, I don't know, if two people are not the same person, then, no, this is not more intuitive.
Oh, wait.
Maybe.
Then you can do
If they're
Morgan
two
on that one so
different,
that,
then they're not both pretty.
Yeah.
That's, I take it back that that's more intuitive.
No, but you can do De Morgan's on that section would be like,
Just do the thing
either
that I was
X
saying.
X is preppy or Y is preppy.
Just do the thing that I was saying, where you just say
You're basically saying
Either
one of those two is not
x is not preppy, or y is not preppy, or they're the same person.
That also also works, right? So for all X and for all Y, wait, does this work?
Yes.
So either they're,
I think it works.
either X is not preppy, or Y is not preppy, or
They're the same person.
they're equal. Okay. So this basically says, I think this is right. This basically says, yo, if you just reach into your bag of people and grab any two people, then they can't both be preppy. Follow? And here's how we enforce that. That possibly that you grab the same person both times. So that's one thing that could happen. But if you legit grabbed two different people, then one of them is not preppy at least. Get it? Okay, I give this the seal of approval. Back to this.
Wait,
What's up?